Samurai Shodown, the renowned fighting game series that captivated players with its Japanese settings, eerie atmosphere, anime-style characters, and beautiful music, is celebrating its 30-year anniversary. The franchise played a crucial role in shaping the fighting games genre as we know it today. So let us delve into its history and significance in this Samurai Shodown retrospective. In the early 90s, fighting games gained immense popularity after the release of Street Fighter II by Capcom. SNK, an emerging arcade maker at the time, entered the scene with their first fighting game, Fatal Fury, shortly after launching the Neo Geo Arcade MVS cabinet in 1991. SNK continued to release fighting games, including Auto Fighting and Fatal Fury 2, which directly competed with Street Fighter II. Meanwhile, within SNK, a small team led by Yasushi Adachi, later known as the Samurai Gumi team, was tasked with creating a hit title for the Neo Geo systems. Initially, they started developing a side-scrolling action game featuring monsters as playable characters. However, inspired by the success of Street Fighter II and Mortal Kombat in the West, Adachi decided to change the concept and create a fighting game that introduced something new to the genre: weapons. To make the game stand out, Adachi and his team aimed to convey the terror and impact of sword fighting, resulting in high damage moves. Although this idea faced initial criticism from SNK executives, Adachi stuck to his vision and successfully tested the game in Japan. The team also decided to infuse the game with Japanese culture, featuring real historical figures and events, such as Yagyu Jubei and Amakusa Shiroto Kisada, who were notable characters inspired by Japanese history. As for the game's lore, it drew from many pop culture movies, such as the 1981 Makai Tensho. On July 7, 1993, the first Samurai Shodown game was released in the arcades. It quickly gained global acclaim with detailed graphics, stunning backgrounds, and a unique roster of 12 warriors, including characters such as Haomaru, Nakoruru, Hanzo, and more. The game's scaling feature, where the screen zoomed in and out during matches, added to its visual appeal. Kuroko, a ninja-like character holding flags, acted as the referee during matches. The game's backgrounds were particularly praised for their craftsmanship, such as Galford Stage featuring a bustling docking port. Samurai Shodown offered a more methodical gameplay approach compared to other fighting games, focusing less on high damage combos. It introduced the Ikari gauge, or as we know it in the West, the POW or Rage meter, which is a secondary meter alongside the life bar. When filled, characters gain temporary increased damage capabilities. This unique mechanic originated from Adachi's frustration during a Street Fighter II match, leading to the team incorporating the concept of channeling players' anger and rage into the game. The game music, composed by Norio Tate, utilized traditional Japanese instruments to enhance the Japanese atmosphere. Moments of silence in the music added tension to the gameplay. Samurai Shodown's high damage aspect revolutionized the fighting game landscape, creating a sense of tension and requiring careful decision-making from both players. Samurai Shodown saw numerous console ports, including Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, 3DO, and even the Game Boy, expanding its reach beyond arcades. It also ventured into other media, with manga adaptations and an anime capitalizing on its popularity in Japan. After the success of the first Samurai Shodown game, SNK decided to develop a sequel that would surpass the original. Released in November 1994, Samurai Shodown 2, also known as Shin Samurai Spirit's Haomaru Jugo Kyuhen in Japan, featured rebuilt graphics and an expanded roster. The Samurai Gumi team, led by Adachi-san, redrew the entire cast of characters, impressing players once again with the game's visuals. The majority of the original cast returned, and new characters like Nicotine, Cham Cham, and Seeker were introduced. The gameplay of Samurai Shodown 2 was enhanced and felt more responsive. The characters gained new movement tricks, such as rolling forward and backward to evade attacks, ducking to avoid high strikes, and small hops to bypass low strikes. The game also introduced super moves, which allowed players to unleash devastating attacks once their rage meter was full. Parry moves, a feature previously unseen in fighting games, was also introduced. When Samurai Shodown 2 was released, it received widespread acclaim and took the arcade scene by storm. It was hailed as a worthy sequel, offering better graphics, smoother gameplay, new moves, and vibrant new characters. However, despite its success in arcades, Samurai Shodown 2 had limited home ports, with only versions for the Neo Geo AES and Neo Geo CD being released. While there was no anime adaptation for Samurai Shodown 2, mangaka Shiro Ono continued their work on the game's manga adaptation. The manga helped further popularize the game among fans. In 1995, SNK shifted its focus to the next installment in the series, Samurai Shodown 3 Blades of Blood, or as it's known in Japan, Samurai Spirits Zankoro Musouken. Set before the events of Samurai Shodown 2, the game took a darker approach in terms of design. All the characters were redrawn to have edgier, more serious, and highly detailed appearances. Some previously comical characters like Earthquake and Genon were completely removed, and even characters like Kyoshiro underwent gritty redesigns. Samurai Shodown 3 design and illustrations were handled by mangaka Shiro Ono, who had previously worked on the manga adaptation of the first two games. Apart from visual changes, Samurai Shodown 3 introduced new gameplay mechanics that proved to be divisive among fans. It abandoned the straightforward character selection and arcade mode progression of its predecessor. Instead, players were given the choice between two versions of each character, Slash and Bust. Slash represented a more normal version resembling their appearance and gameplay style in Samurai Shodown 2, while Bust portrayed a darker and distinct variation. Each version had different special moves and move priorities. Furthermore, players had to select a game level which determined certain combat conditions for the play session. While the increased customization options added depth, they also added confusion for players at the time and made the game more complicated. The gameplay itself underwent changes, with 3 weapon buttons and only 1 kick button. The absence of Hikyaku, the run and delivery man from the previous games, was noticeable, although his items still affected gameplay. Samurai Shodown 3 featured a reduced roster of 12 characters, matching the number from the first game in the series. This was due to the time-consuming process of redesigning and redrawing the game. 4 brand new characters, including Shizumaru and Basara, were introduced. Despite its beautiful graphics and animations, Samurai Shodown 3 was not well received by fans, especially in comparison to its predecessors. The game's shortcomings indicated that SNK needed to approach the series differently. Samurai Shodown 3 did receive multiple home ports, including the PlayStation, as well as a Game Boy edition that was Japan exclusive. As a response to the mixed reception of Samurai Shodown 3, SNK announced and released Samurai Shodown 4. The game aimed to fix previous issues by brightening the color palette, improving character designs, and refining gameplay mechanics. The CD combo mechanic was introduced, allowing players to perform follow-up attacks after triggering a strike with the C and D buttons. Fatalities and suicide moves added a brutal element to the game, and the roster expanded with the inclusion of fan-favorite characters like Jubei and Charlotte. Despite some noticeable frame cuts and a lack of specific character themes, Samurai Shodown 4 received positive reviews and was considered a success for SNK. Meanwhile, another development team within SNK was working on a spin-off RPG based on the Samurai Shodown series. The Samurai Shodown RPG was announced in 1995 and aimed to bring attention to the Neo Geo CD console. The RPG would adapt the stories of the first 3 games in the series, but development faced multiple delays. Due to rising costs, SNK decided to release the game on additional platforms, including the PlayStation and Sega Saturn. In 1997, Shinsetsu Samurai Spirits Bushido Retsuden, as the RPG was officially titled in Japan, was released. It featured a classic RPG format with exploration, turn-based battles, and the choice between RPG and fighting game controls. Players could select one of the 6 characters as their main hero and experience unique dialogue and scenes based on their choice. The game received a good reception and was praised for its animation, music, and voice work. Following the success of Samurai Shodown 4, an RPG spin-off, SNK was ready to explore the realm of 3D. 5 years after the release of the successful Neo Geo MVS arcade system, SNK announced the development of the Hyper Neo Geo 64, a new arcade system featuring 3D polygon graphics. In 1997, Samurai Shodown 64, the first title for the new system, was released. The game introduced multi-tiered stages and the ability to knock opponents out of the fighting arena, but it received mixed reviews due to its slower pace, underperforming hardware, and low-resolution textures. Samurai Shodown 64 allowed players to choose between two versions of each character and featured a control scheme with 4 buttons for weapon attacks, kicks and grabs, and 3D movement. It introduced a stamina gauge that affected attack power and a POW gauge for executing super moves. The game had lukewarm reception, as some fans were put off by the fully embraced 3D gameplay, slower pace, and different control schemes. Despite the hardware limitations, the presentation was praised for its excellent music and smooth transition between 3D and 2D art. Samurai Shodown 64 was never ported to home consoles due to SNK's financial problems and the low reception of the Hyper Neo Geo 64 hardware. The company attempted to correct the course of the franchise with the sequel, Samurai Shodown 64 Warrior's Rage. It was released in 1998 and made improvements in graphics and gameplay based on fan feedback. The game received average reviews but failed to stand out among contemporary arcade hardware. Samurai Shodown 64 Warrior's Rage did receive a console adaptation for the Neo Geo Pocket Color under the name Samurai Shodown 2. This version presented the game mechanics in 2D and included additional characters, and honestly played a lot better than the 3D version. Samurai Shodown 64 Warrior's Rage also received an anime adaptation titled Samurai Spirit 64 Ashura Zanmaden, which was a canon prologue to the Hyper Neo Geo 64 game. SNK made another attempt in 3D with Samurai Shodown Warrior's Rage, which was a new game exclusive to the Sony PlayStation and has nothing to do with the Samurai Shodown 64 Warrior's Rage, even though they had the same subtitle. Released in 1999, it introduced a controversial character roster and changed the gameplay to a 2D plane with limited movement along the Z-axis. The game was poorly received due to the lack of recognizable characters, as only Haomaru was from the previous games. It also suffered from poor graphics and confusing life meter system. Following the negative reception and SNK's financial troubles, the Samurai Shodown series was put on hiatus. However, SNK released a text-based RPG called Nakoruru Ano Hito Kara no Okorimono, focusing on the character Nakoruru. Accompanied by a cancelled anime series, the game allowed players to make choices and complete mini-games. The Samurai Shodown series faced challenges with its transition to 3D, resulting in mixed reviews and criticism from fans and critics. SNK's financial situation and the negative reception contributed to the series being put on hold temporarily, leaving the future uncertain. Shortly after, SNK went through a series of acquisitions, first by the Korean company Eolith in 2001 and then by Playmore in 2002. Rebranded as SNK Playmore, the company started focusing on reviving the Neo Geo system, which was already a decade old. Amidst the announcements of new games, SNK Playmore revealed a new Samurai Shodown title in production. However, fans were concerned when they learned that the game would be outsourced to Yuki Enterprises, a relatively unknown company with no experience in making fighting games. To generate excitement, SNK started sharing information about the game, that it would serve as a prequel to the original Samurai Shodown, taking place 2 years before the first installment, entitled Samurai Spirit Zero in Japan, while called Samurai Shodown 5 internationally. The game featured more colorful graphics than its predecessors and introduced new gameplay mechanics. Samurai Shodown 5 removed the complicated slash and bust modes and difficulty levels from Samurai Shodown 3 and 4. It introduced the concentration technique called Mu no Kyochi, which allowed players to slow down time and execute powerful combos. However, the game shocked fans by removing the gory violence for which the series was known. Violence was toned down and the ability to cut opponents in half or perform fatalities was completely removed. The game received mixed reviews due to these changes and other issues like poor character animations and imbalanced roster. In response to the criticism, SNK Playmore released an upgraded version called Samurai Shodown 5 Special in 2004. The game balanced characters and introduced the Zetsume Ogi, an overkill move that instantly ended matches under specific conditions. However, the game was censored at the last minutes before releasing on the AES, which led to game-breaking bugs. There was also attempts to create another version of Samurai Shodown 5, called Samurai Shodown 5 Perfect, but the project was shut down before completion. However, in 2019, it was revealed that the complete ROM of Samurai Shodown 5 Perfect was kept by the game director Takaya-san. SNK and Digital Eclipse were able to translate the game's story into English and include it in the Samurai Shodown Neo Geo collection. SNK Playmore then shifted its focus to the Sega Sammy Atomi's Wave arcade system and developed Samurai Shodown 6, also known as Samurai Spirit's Tenkachi Kenkakuden. The game used 2D sprites from previous games with 3D backgrounds and introduced the Spirit Select system, allowing players to choose between 6 different fighting styles. Samurai Shodown 6 toned down violence, removed fatalities, and replaced blood effects with fireworks. The game received mixed reviews due to changes in gameplay and voice actors. Following Samurai Shodown 6, SNK Playmore released Samurai Spirit Sen, a 3D entry in the series developed by K2 LLC. The game removed almost every character's special move and simplified gameplay, making it look closely to Soul Calibur than Samurai Shodown, which led to negative reviews and disappointment among fans. SNK Playmore then announced a focus on pachinko games rather than console games, causing concerns about the future of the Samurai Shodown franchise. However, as SNK was rebranded again as SNK, in October 2018 the company finally announced Samurai Shodown, a revival and reboot of the series. Directed by Nobuyuki Koroki, the game returned to 2D gameplay, using the Unreal Engine and Japanese ink stylized visuals. It received positive reviews for its back-to-basics approach and intense gameplay, becoming popular in esports events. The game received multiple updates and DLC characters and is currently getting an update to add rollback netcode, allowing for better online matchmaking experience. Samurai Shodown was released for various platforms including PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, Google Stadia and Steam. The game exceeded sales expectations, with the retail version quickly selling out in Japan. Now, I did skip a lot of information to keep this video at this length, but I highly suggest that you watch the 2-hour-long History of Samurai Shodown documentary by clicking on the video on the screen. And if you want more about the Samurai Shodown lore, I suggest you watch the Samurai Shodown Bushido Tales series.